Welcome into another episode of Transformations with Ordinary Pioneer. My name is Halina, the founder of our spiritual healing community, Ordinary Pioneer, in White House, Ohio. And I am here with Chris Eischen, who is becoming a fast friend and an incredible motivator in my life. He's an entrepreneur of many different facets and inspires the community through his social media content and so much more that I'm excited for you to learn about. Thank you so much for being here, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I've been eager to hear more about you and to learn more about you. And if you follow Chris on social media, you'll know that he's incredibly inspiring. And you always, I feel like you get up before me and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, what did Chris post? Like, what's my intention for today? Or what's some spiritual nugget that you'll bestow upon me? So I would love to hear a little bit more about what's inspired you? What has brought you into this incredibly open way of being?
Yeah. A divorce.
Okay.
Plain and simple, to start it off, it was a divorce.
Okay.
That was what I found with people is that there's typically a catalyst that causes people to pause and reflect and start making change. And for me, that divorce was that catalyst. It was that like, think, wait a minute, where am I at right now? You know, reflecting on where I'm at in my life and like where I want to be and where the disconnect happened. And then that was the beginning of the journey that I'm on currently of continuously reflecting on what my results are and am I creating the life through intention as opposed to like a life of have to.
Yeah. The pause, I love that, and I can reflect on my own life. And I've had a couple of pauses in my life, Chris, where I've stopped and thought that same thing, like, what am I doing here? There's got to be something greater than this. And it's, it may strike in the form of tragedy or, families breaking apart. Mine was my parents' divorce. That was my first pause of, what's going on. But it sets us on this incredible path. So coming out of it, let me ask you this. So after that, did you start to notice growth right away, or was it kind of a gradual progression of understanding from your pause?
Well, you hear the saying, like, or where they compare it to an onion, right? You're always peeling back the layers of the onion. So for me, it's a really good question and a difficult one to answer, because it's like when I got started down the path of personal growth, I am the type of person, I have to go all in, right? So I'm reading books, I'm trying to find, audio books. At the time I was working at GM, working night shift, 12-hour days. So I'd put headphones in and listen to music, or in this case, books and things. But yet, I worked so much, I could consume a crap ton of content in a week. So I was like constantly looking for more and more content to consume. And through that repetition of hearing of all these things that were possible, like have you ever seen the movie The Secret or read the book?
No, people tell me about it, but I haven't.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's all about manifestation.
Yes.
And so that was on Netflix at the time. And so it's like, I'm watching that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, John Assaraf is on one of the people in that film and that helped put that book together. And he was doing these like brain exercises and around manifestation. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this workshop or whatever, do this exercise. And it's like, you just think about the things that you really want to create in your life. And then you basically journal about it. You put it on paper. And by putting it on paper, you're like manifesting that into the universe. That's like casting that spell of like, this is going to come into reality, And what's really interesting is at the time when I did the training, I was going through a divorce. And part of the training was manifesting the partner that you want for your life. And I'm like, I don't want a partner.
Yeah.
Like, I just got my heart broken. I dealt with all that. Like, I don't even want to do this part of the exercise, but I reluctantly did it. Like, fast forward a few years later, I find that, and that is who is my wife now.
Oh, wow.
You know, yeah, I was like, man, if I would have realized how well this worked, I would have been a little more detailed.
Yeah,
with it,
I know. I love that.
That's a joke.
I know, I get it. I read that. Yeah. I love how you talked about going all in, because we've talked about addiction through a couple of our episodes in here, and how sometimes when tragedy strikes, or we have that pause as we're referring to it, sometimes we go in that opposite direction where we go all in and manifest more darkness in our life. You know, we kind of fall off the wagon or whatever it may be. And so we have that choice. Like, that's what I'm hearing from you is you made that choice as, you know, as your world is shifting, that there's something positive here that's available for you. And that's that all in of, yes, like I'm going all for this. There's something greater out here.
Yeah. And the thing is like, we're going to run into obstacles along the way, right? I have this big vision and this big dream, these BHAG, right? Big, hairy, audacious goal that I want to achieve. And along the way, I'm stumbling, tripping, falling, screwing up. You know, we talked about this earlier about like, oh, I didn't file that tax or something,
Yeah.
you know? It's like, oh, crap. Now where am I going to come up with those funds, you know? Like, we learn along the way. And I think that the important piece with that is giving ourselves grace. And looking at life as a practice. Like, this isn't a be perfect. It's, you know, we're practicing at life. Yeah. We know we want these things to come into our life. We've done the manifestation work and we've envisioned it coming true. And along the way, you know, temptations happen, things happen, we stumble, we get off the path of where we are headed. And it's like, well, we have options at this point. Okay, I'm off the path. I want to get back on the path. Yeah. Well, I can sit there and wallow in this self beat up and get harder on myself and live in that depression and in the suck, right? Like, that's what it is. It's just, it's like suck of all the mistakes that I made. Yeah. And I can live in that. And actually, I think living in that moment and in that feeling for a period of time is healthy. It's where a lot of this work is created. But at a certain point, you got to snap out of that and you've got to make a choice to shift and reflect on, okay, well, what didn't work? You know, and what can I try different this time? And just keeping in mind, this is a practice. What other, you know, you don't go pick up a basketball for the first time and expect to, you know, join the NBA. Yeah. You don't expect to like, oh, I played for my high school team, so I should be able to play in the pros. Like, no, you got to put in the work. Yeah. It's the same thing with life. It's like, if you want the things that you want, it's going to take work and not just the work to get the thing. It's all the mistakes and the learning through the process of getting there. Yeah. You said something really profound too, with allowing yourself to be in that suck for a while. And I would love to hear more about what you mean with that. So oftentimes we get, like, something hurts us, right? We have this memory of pain and we want to run away from that memory. And the reality is, like, that memory, however painful it might be, had its level of influence on us. And so at a certain point, it's like embracing that pain and understanding the value. Like, how can I pull the wisdom from that? You know, like, if I make a mistake and I don't want to own up to that mistake and I just ignore it and pretend like I didn't make it, then I'm not learning, I'm not growing, you know, or anything. Whereas if I made a mistake. Let's look at this mistake. How did I make that mistake? What got me to that point? Yeah. And give myself grace with that, because I'm only human. Yeah. I do what I do, and I do my best every day, but sometimes it's not in the path of my vision. Yeah. And so if I find myself off path, reflect. What am I doing? Why why has this been what has been created as opposed to the thing I'm intending to create.
I love like the stream of wisdom that comes through in that, where I feel like that's why we're here on this earth, is to gather wisdom, right? And it's a lot funner to do it when like everything's great and I can see, oh, how happy life can be, and it's more challenging to do it when, obstacles come in our way, or, we get stopped in life by a tragedy or whatever it may be, to pause and allow those feelings to come through. I think that's one of the hardest things for me to do, is when, life takes a turn and I'm grieving or whatever may happen, to allow myself to feel those feelings and really be vulnerable and open-hearted to receive that part of existing and being human as well. What would you say when you are, whether you're in, your highs or your lows, how do you connect with that stream of wisdom?
Well, first off is meditation. And for me, so I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were like, meditation, oh, I don't do that. He's like, I'll sit in prayer. Perfect. That's language. We all give things different definitions. Some people call God, Jesus, Spirit, Mohammed, John Smith. I was like, that's right. Yeah, like we all have the name that we want to give that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I think we're all talking about the same thing. It's like spiritual self, like inner self is, I don't know. I feel like the analogy I think of is like the ocean, right? And our spirits are like the ocean. We're all connected somehow in some oceanic way.
Well, there's like explaining consciousness. That's how I kind of learned it, was the ocean, and then we are that drop, and as we drop into the ocean as our singular self, we end up just disintegrating or integrating into all other beings and experience that level of connectedness, which I can also say I've also experienced through meditation. And it's difficult for me to connect with other people or see their experience of oneness when I got to go to the grocery store, I got to do this, and it's like I'm completely in my ego, like I'm disconnected from what's happening. Somebody could be waving to me and I wouldn't even know. But in the meditation, that does give us access to experiencing that. Have you always had a meditation practice, or is this something that's developed more recently?
The past 10 years. It's more recent. Like, there was a level of it that I didn't quite understand what I was creating. I would like drive in my car and play like classical music and just kind of get into a zone. And that zone like allowed my mind to settle. So I would like tap into some of the experience of what I would get with meditation, but I didn't know what meditation was or how to label that. But now if I, reflecting back, it's like, oh, that was me. Oh, look at my, naive little self.
Yeah, you're doing it, but you don't know you're doing it, but you're doing it.
Figuring it out, like, oh, I was finding peace.
Yeah.
I think that's really nice.
And then the simplicity of meditation, like you said, being in the zone, whether, we're praying or walking in the park or listening to music, being in that zone. Yeah. So is there a specific form of meditation that you practice, or how did you get started? I know for myself, when I first learned about meditation, it was like, oh man, I can't do this. My mind's too busy. My body's too busy. I can't concentrate. How did you get started with all that?
Guided meditations that I found through podcasts and online. And one of my good friends actually has her own like meditation podcast. I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Would you like to give her a shout out?
Shell Hamilton.
Okay.
I don't know the name of the podcast, so I'd have to look it up. But it's really cool to be able to put your headphones on and be guided through, close your eyes, step into darkness. That's like what I like, because then like that's setting the stage, right? And allowing my imagination to create in that darkness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like a blank slate kind of thing.
And so whatever in a guided meditation, then I can allow that to dictate what I'm seeing. Because if there's water running or something, I'm imagining, a stream in front of me, and I'm smelling the air and the birds chirping or whatever, whatever, really immersing myself into it because I'm really in depth with their voice, if that makes sense, connected to what they're saying. And so that's how I first got started.
Okay.
And that helped me notice what my body was doing in that guide, through that guided piece. And then it was like, oh, let me see if I can imitate that on my own without the guide.
Yeah.
And so now when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is just like calm, let myself calm, my thoughts and everything. And then slowly the priority list builds for me. And then once I'm like clear on the intention that I'm creating for the day, and I know like what I want to go out in the world and create, then I'll go look at my schedule and see what that looks like on my schedule.
Every day's an adventure.
Yeah. But I get clarity on the reset, what impact do I want to make today. If I'm having an interview or something, like what do I want to leave behind in that interview? And, so setting that intention before my feet hit the ground.
Yeah. So, like which direction you're looking at instead of like, I get in the bad habit of waking up and I'm like, okay, it's time to start my day. And I got an adrenal test months or years back, and it showed like a spike in like the morning. And I'm like, well, why is that? I'm like, oh man, like I do wake up like, okay, ready to go, seize the day, but I'm not focusing my attention on, well, what is today all about? What, how is God using me today to create impact or to grow in my own self-awareness? So you're teaching other, through the Facebook group and other by other means too. Would you share a little bit about, how you get the word out and this message that you're carrying of what's possible through spiritual and emotional and physical well-being?
Yeah, I mean, really sky's the limit of possibilities, right? But the reality of what's possible is peace, self, with self, and real joy. Happiness is like a fleeting moment. Oh, I felt happy when this thing happened, right? When my sports team won or whatever, right?
They don't always win.
Right. But yeah, I felt happy. But joy is that happiness with longevity.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do I live a life of more joy? And so for me, it was like getting clear on the intention of what is my life, right? And then how do I break it down into categories that are digestible? And so my friend Craig and we have the Facebook page, Inspiring Elevated Habits, which is set up to just raise awareness and build community and inspire each other to elevate habits.
Yeah.
Right? Like inspiring elevated habits.
Yeah.
It's
perfectly literal. Yeah.
So the idea is that Monday through Sunday, we have one domain or area of life that we focus on. And it's 7 domains, so it makes it really easy. But, we start with our mental, then we go to our physical body, so our mental health, the things, how do we take care of our mind? And it's just like our physical body, the things that we put into our mind, the content that we're consuming is all feeding that, right, in our thought process. So what we focus on becomes the reality that we see from. And so it's really becoming and creating intention about what we're doing for our mental health and for our mental growth. Right? Am I reading books? Am I consuming content that is expanding me? Or am I, because if I'm not growing, what am I doing? Then the physical, same concept. What am I doing about my physical body? Elevating my heart rate per day to get that blood pumping, to keep myself healthy and my arteries and everything flexible. That's what we want. And then our spiritual self is like really taking that time to look at our spiritual side of self and healing some of those past wounds. There's all kinds of things that can come up when we start diving into there. And for me, I won't go into my whole story, but that was a touchy subject for me. It was something I'm like, I don't know if I want to go into all that. But facing that has really brought me a lot of breakthroughs. Then we talk about relationships. So the first three things are what I call kind of our oxygen mask. That's taking care of ourselves, mental, physical, and spiritual. And then the next one is relationships. That's my relationship with my partner or my friends and family, the community that I'm close with. Which brings us to the next one, which is community. And that's the broader community, you know, my associates, maybe coworkers, things like that, you know, or my local grocery store. You know, that's my community, and how I show up to the grocery store reflects on that community. And then revenue, which is how am I paying bills? What am I doing with that money that I'm receiving? How am I creating that flow in my life with revenue? And then contribution is how am I giving back from everything that I'm receiving? Not just financial, but physical, you know, like how am I physically giving back as well, you know, like showing up for.
I love how well-rounded those steps are, because I feel like you hit all of the points along that journey of spiritual and emotional and physical well-being. And so if somebody wants to learn more about this path that you're creating with Craig, how can they learn more about this?
ChrisEischen.com.
Okay.
The spelling, I'm sure it's EISCHEN.
And I'll put a link in the description.
ChrisEischen.com. You can go there, or jump on Facebook and join the group Inspiring Elevated Habits.
Perfect.
I'd be glad to see you on there too. So
I'll put a link in the description as well for that. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing the wisdom that you've learned and your inspiration with myself and our outpouring community. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And before we close, I invite us all to just take a pause so we can integrate this message, integrate the wisdom. So just take a few deep breaths, grounding yourself into this moment right here, this sacred moment, wherever you are. Tuning into the spirit that lives within you, the one that is growing, that is learning, that is feeling these feelings, that is experiencing love, and that is searching for this ultimate peace. I invite us just to take a moment to honor that one within ourselves, searching for that peace, knowing that we don't need to look too far in order to experience it, as it resides within ourselves. And together we'll take a deep breath in and release as one. Well, thank you once again for joining our episode of Transformations with Ordinary Pioneer with my guest, Chris Eischen. And I invite you to check out our website, ordinarypioneer.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. We have a whole bunch of material. We have a lot of online content and, of course, our in-person spiritual gatherings. Many blessings to you. Namaste.
Thank you so much.